The purpose of this act is to give the care workforce of New York some relief.
The Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry, with your host, Adam Friedman.
Government assistance programs can expand access to home ownership, but they also introduce additional liens and recapture provisions that may complicate servicing and foreclosure when the loans become delinquent. Today, we're looking at what happens when government subsidies enter the mortgage stack. Today, I'm joined by Friedman Vartolo Counsel, Anthony Ortiz, to help us work through this topic. Anthony, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Adam.
We're speaking about a government assistance program that's on the table in New York. Can you explain that a little bit?
This is the CareForce First-Time Homebuyers Act. The legislature has identified that New York's care workforce, they face a housing affordability crisis, and that threatens their workforce stability. And in turn, it could threaten the quality of care that they give certain populations.
I mean, it sounds like a nice bill.
Yeah. The current list of qualifying professionals are direct support professionals, certain nursing assistants, licensed nurse practitioners, registered nurses, certain behavioral health and human services staff. So the full list is yet to be published, but that is the initial occupations. Some practical considerations that this bill doesn't seem to address is whether or not the state of New York mortgage agency needs to be named as a subordinate lien holder to actually be cut off. The bill doesn't address whether or not the state of New York mortgage agency will have the right of redemption. What happens if there's an unforgiven balance if the property is sold at a foreclosure sale for less than the total lien amounts? None of this is really addressed in the initial bill.
So typically, when the government is creating an assisted mortgage program to promote home ownership, that's generally the purpose. These are typically subordinate loans. Foreclosing lender or a servicer, does this matter to them?
Yes, it certainly does matter, because much like a partial claim mortgage that can be used to cure the default on a first position lien, this program proposes borrower assistance that will likewise be recorded in a subordinate position.
But when we say it's subordinate, if we're foreclosing from first position or a position of higher priority, we're assuming we're going to be able to foreclose this out, right?
Yeah. So some key characteristics, it's going to be a recorded subordinate lien. So yes, in theory, it should appear on a title search. That would need to be addressed in any prospective foreclosure proceeding.
I think this is something that when we get asked about government liens on properties that are subordinate, there's a degree of concern, probably stemming from tax liens or something like that, where there's a concern that their lien position is actually in jeopardy. But I think it would be a pretty extreme move if New York or a different state created something where the government could lend and actually jump the first lien's priority.
No, and let's recognize that the purpose of this act is to give the care workforce of New York some relief. You know, they are crucial in workforce stability in terms of ensuring a quality of care for certain vulnerable populations. So the government has recognized the need to help this class out. And it would shock me if the Senate would then turn around and say that these liens have priority over a first position mortgage.
Thank you for joining Anthony Ortiz and I on the Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry. Thanks for tuning in and looking forward to seeing you next time.